an interesting time, friends, but I think the important thing to start off with, and folk who know me will understand the point I want to make, is first and foremost, I'm a member of the independence movement. That is how I define myself. And I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room whose bitter disappointment from 2014 has been part of the energy that has helped them work in the last few years to ensure that the dream is very much alive. But before I talk about Alba's Westminster activity, I want to remember, for me, where this journey really began and why there is an Alba Westminster group in the first place. So in 2019 was a memorable year for a whole lot of different reasons, some which I'm happy to talk about, others I'd rather forget. But if I reflect back to the SNP campaign conference that year, there was a number of things that happened and a change in the mood that really stand out for me. And I was one of those people who was sitting in the crowd when Chris and Angus MacNeil brought forward their Plan B. And I believed that there was a secret plan. I believed that there was a strategy that would take Scotland to independence. But the reality was that the secret plan is to rubbish Angus and Chris and then to adopt that policy and try and implement it anyway. And that is no secret plan, and that is not a strategy. So Alba exists because we are absolutely necessary. And there is one simple truth, that no one and nothing will tell me to stop campaigning for Scotland's independence. Now, I was going to tell you a wee story about what I said to Dominic Raab and Boris Johnson when I was leaving the chamber, but you've just heard it from myself last week in Glasgow. But it really felt, I want to say about that is, I didn't say that for mischief. I said it because I believe it, and I said it on behalf of all of you and everyone outside this hall who passionately believe Scotland's independence is happening. But look where we are now. I mean, Liz Truss is a woman who has single-handedly made Boris Johnson look like a safe pair of hands. And she has absolutely no credibility. She didn't have any credibility in my book before she was selected as the Prime Minister. But this notion that she has, that she can somehow stimulate growth by a slash-and-burn policy, is ludicrous. It is, as Kenny mentioned yesterday, it's straight out of the Chicago School of Economics playbook. It's a practice that has damaged societies and communities the world over. And it's at its foundation is something that we know about the Conservative Party, and we know that it's true. Our rational arguments, our strategy and policies for the common weal are not shared by Conservatives in Westminster. Their principal focus is greed. And that is proven by the transfer of enormous sums of money during the COVID crisis into the hands of well-connected people to be secreted away in offshore accounts. And of course, the HMRC are not going after that. The government are not going after that. They are adding to it. Tax loopholes exist for a purpose, and it is not to protect ordinary people like you and I. The HMRC is for little people. Food banks are for little people. In-work poverty is for others. Interest rates hikes and unaffordable mortgages are not for the Conservatives. But where are Labour in all of this mess? Well, I tell you where they're not. They're not on the picket lines with unionised workforces defending employment rights and wages. And where are the SNP? Well, we know where they are. They're sitting on their hands, waiting for what exactly? We need a healthy debate, and we have discussed different routes to independence this weekend. And all routes to independence need to be on the table. And along with SSRG, Salvo, Robin McAlpine, and the illustrious bloggers, we are leading the debate. Make no mistake. We've discussed history, and history is important, but we have to win the political arguments. At the moment, those arguments are taking place within the UK state apparatus, and I understand the frustration that many of you feel that that is where we are at the moment. The Westminster government are part of the UK state apparatus, as is the Supreme Court, as is the Scottish government. Indeed, where we find ourselves is that the Lord Advocate for Scotland is effectively making the case for the union. I recommend you read Craig Murray's coverage of that to get a good sense of what exactly is happening. It's a bit like asking the jailer to politely, please give me the keys so that I can get out of here. But there's no sense of urgency or commitment to that. So what do we need? We need MPs in Westminster who have the purpose and courage to negotiate our independence, not to dot I's, not to cross T's on government policy. We need to go there with the urgent priority of withdrawal from this union. Now, I don't think it's hyperbole for me to say that Alba's two MPs have punched above our collective weight, establishing the group as a distinct political force in Westminster. Our forthright approach has set the agenda in policy areas from energy to poverty and, of course, independence. We've introduced a cold climate allowance bill and led the debate on the impact of the escalating costs of unregulated fuel and domestic fuel and VAT. And next week, Kenny will introduce a bill to address the iniquity and scandal of prepayment energy meters. We've challenged the Tories on COVID corruption. And I've led on the deliberate, in fact, been a sole voice for the industry, the deliberate undermining of the domestic diagnostic sector. Alba have taken a distinct approach to the Ukraine war and the resultant energy crisis across the world. We called first for renewed exploration of the North Sea with a wellhead tax on any new licences to ensure that there was funding for carbon reduction initiatives here in Scotland. We've called out the Scottish Government on their shipbuilding and offshore energy renewable scandals, and we're leading action on the reintroduction, the reinstatement of Scotland's maritime links to mainland Europe. It is hard to believe, but it is nonetheless true, that Kenny and I have had more positive responses and willingness to engage from UK government ministers on this top priority than any minister in the Scottish Government. We've stood firm on democracy, equalities, press freedoms, and we boldly, I think it's fair to say, captured international attention on Scotland's right to independence with our targeted intervention at Johnson's penultimate PMQ on the 13th of July. So Westminster is in a state of chaos, shock and confusion, and Scotland should be using that to our urgent advantage. When the USSR was collapsing, Estonians were able to assert their independence with the approval of the world because they had done the necessary preparation and were ready to enact legislation. And while we may justifiably lament the lack of progress that's been made since 2014 by the Scottish Government, that won't help us make progress on independence. Instead, I want to conclude my remarks today with an appeal to every independent supporting MP in Westminster. Now is the time to put your money where your mouth is. No more impotent protestations. No more calls for one more mandate. We must unite and secure an urgent constitutional convention which places the protection of Scotland and our people as the galvanising priority. Liz Truss cannot be allowed to veto Scotland's democracy any further. We must be ready. We must be ready to respond with agility and speed when the appetite and opportunity presents itself. Scotland's MPs must unite to assert the sovereign will of the Scottish people, and any failure to do so will be an unforgivable and dangerous mistake. So, conference, we are here because the dream is very much alive, and with vision, graft and determination, we can bring that dream to realisation. So thank you, conference.